Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports Georgia. We're going to hop on over to our Georgia Insider right now, Mr. Bryce Mandala, to talk all things Georgia football. A lot has happened since I've last seen you, Bryce. We've been dealing with holidays, spring break, sicknesses, mainly on me being out and about, traveling and whatnot. But we're back at it, and a lot of things have happened, like I said, since we last spoke. Guys getting arrested. We're having flips. We're having decommitments. We're having crystal balls. You've got spring practice going on right now. It's been busy. We got the spring game coming up on April 13th as well, which we'll dive into a little bit. But how have you been, and how are we feeling about everything going on right now?
I've been great. And, I feel like the past few shows we've been kind of talking how, Georgia football and pretty much all of college football has been a little slow.
Mm.
Kind of that mid January to mid March is just kind of the dead period for a lot of college football programs. So maybe we needed a little hiatus. Maybe we needed a few shows off so that we could kind of catch up on some of the highlights in Georgia football. And yeah, there's been a lot happening the past few weeks, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
That's true. We're fresh. We're ready to bounce back. It kind of a little bit. We're kind of dragging, so we're feeling good. But let's talk about it. I know this is a little bit old news, but we have to still talk about it. The Trevor Etn situation, DUI, gets arrested. We are also kind of had out work. I said on our main show, look here. How I saw this thing rolling out was Kirby would come out and just basically say, look, we're going to handle it internally. It's going to go away. We're going to have the spring game. Maybe he doesn't play the spring game. Nobody's going to remember this come week one. Do you think anything more comes from this, like a suspension, or is this it's already over, in my opinion. I think we're talking about it because we didn't get to talk about it, but I think it's already done and over with.
Yeah, so there is a suspension that's going to be placed on Trevor Etn for this. I looked into it on ESPN, Sports Illustrated, pretty much everywhere covered it. So basically, I thought this was a little obscure, but the University of Georgia, not the NCAA or anything, the University of Georgia has a regulation for athletes who get DUIs. So I mean they're ahead of the game with this. And basically it says that if an athlete gets a DUI, they are required to miss at least 10% of the upcoming season, which is equivalent to 2 games
Wow.
for a college football's 12 game schedule. So it's a little interesting with other sports like a sport like baseball or softball when there's 55 games, they're missing five. I mean, that'd be 5.5 games. So 6 games because it says at least 10% of the season.
Yeah.
So you're missing 6 games out of a 55 game schedule.
Nobody noticed.
That's yeah. I mean, that's a couple series. Hopefully, it's before like SEC SEC series. So they're not, I guess, missing the big games. But for a 12 game schedule in college football for the regular season, it's kind of unfortunate because one game would be like 8.75% of the season. So it has to be at least 10%. So Trevor Etienne's going to miss 2 games for the
Well,
2024
he
season.
could miss a game in the first half of the game, right? Or maybe a quarter if we're talking about percentages here.
I'm not 100% sure, but that is something that I didn't really consider.
Yeah, if
So,
I know Curbs,
yeah,
the guy's gonna find a way. I would be shocked if he sat a two full games. But do they get to pick the games, or is it in order?
that's something that one of my friends mentioned too. Like, obviously, we open up the season with Clemson at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that's no walk in the park. So, missing our running back one for that game, isn't ideal. But then week 2, we play Tennessee Tech at home, which is obviously um, a lot easier opponent than Clemson. But if if we were able to choose the game, of course, it would be probably the entire Tennessee Tech game, and then in November we play UMass. So if it was a
If I had
scenario
to
like that,
guess, yeah,
yeah,
if I have to guess, because that Tennessee Tech game is gonna be at home, right?
yeah,
And since this
Yep.
is
And
Georgia's
UMass.
rule, they're able to imply it or apply it. They're going to put it on that Georgia game. I guarantee you he sits for the full game against Tennessee Tech and then maybe a quarter for the next game. That Clemson game's he's playing because they'll play it as if like it's a not an exhibition because it's not, but kind of give it that feel. You know what I mean? Like this. That's what Brian Kelly did. Like, hey, he's gonna miss playing in front of the home fans. Like, come on. That's how they get through
Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of saves ETN in this scenario is that it's a University of Georgia law.
Yeah,
This isn't an NCAA law, where this would be a lot harder to kind of cut corners. But like you said, Kirby Smart has a great internal relationship with, the University of Georgia Athletic Association. So if he tries to kind of cut corners and make it, a little bit more favorable to the Georgia football team, I think he'll successfully do that. And that'll be a scenario where, yeah, he misses the Tennessee Tech game and the UMass game in November if he's able to pick. But if not, that is going to be unfortunate against Clemson, who, has been on a bit of a decline, but Clemson is still Clemson.
yeah,
Like, that's as for a season opener, especially too, like, if Georgia gets off to a slow start or whatever, that could be a dangerous game to mess around with.
for sure. I mean, it's the first game of the season. There's so many unknowns, and playing a big tough game like that, day one, anything can happen. It's a neutral site, but it is in Georgia. But very interesting to see how that will play out. I don't think it'll be Tennessee Tech and then UMass. You got to do it back to back to have some kind of, or does it feel like you're cherry picking? You know what I mean? I think if you claim that, hey, the first home game and then the following game for the first quarter, you can get a pass. And I think that's going to be the best case scenario for them. I also don't think that they're at this dire need where if Trevor Etienne's out, that, Georgia's going to be hurt by any stretch. But and I've said it before, and I think running backs are a dime a dozen, and it's just that type. It's just what the position group is right now. I mean, there's just so much talent back there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we made a video about it of Georgia's running back room. It's not like Carson Beck, our QB1 is missing a game. Like, that's a little bit more of a an uncertainty if that happened. But I think Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson, Nate Frazier, the 5-star true freshman, I believe that they can do a solid job of playing in his place.
Yeah, I think you guys will be, like I said, just fine with whatever you guys have left. So all in all, we'll see how it plays out. Interesting situation. I mean, the Florida fans, we definitely had a little fun with it when it happened. I mean, as anybody would. But I said too on our shows, like, look, it's you never want to see anything bad happen to a young man. Thankfully, nothing serious happened. But once it's all settled, we're gonna have fun and take our jabs. But now, to give you some credit here, we've talked about on the shows previously, you kind of defended yourself where it's been a slow recruiting cycle for Georgia. They were sitting at a quiet top 5. They've now, with the decommitments and nothing else happening, have fallen out of the top 10, top 15, I believe, for the 2025 recruiting cycle. So it's kind of solidifying what you've been stating, that it feels slow. And then we have this massive weekend where a lot of things don't go Georgia's way. I mean, it happened the same weekend with Trevor Etn. That happened. Then we had some flips. It just felt like, what's going on? The sky is falling. I never really ever really panics, I think, with Georgia with the success, but had a little bump in the road. But before we dive into that, you guys did land yourselves a nice little quarterback for 2026 and Jared Curtis.
Yeah, so Georgia lands QB Jared Curtis, the number 1 player in the class of 2026, according to 24/7 Sports. He's a little lower on On3 and ESPN, I believe. He's like still a top 3 quarterback on those sites. And another thing you have to consider too, Julian Lewis did reclassify from 2026 to 2025. So realistically, Julian Lewis would still be the number 1 player in the class of 2026 if he didn't reclassify. So yeah, he's a 6'4", 225-pound quarterback from Nashville Christian School in Nashville, Tennessee, which is pretty interesting too, that University of Tennessee, or I guess Vanderbilt for that matter too, wasn't able to land him. But, University of Tennessee did get George McIntyre, one of the, I believe on 24/7 Sports, George McIntyre is the number one quarterback in the class of 2025, who is also a homegrown Tennessee guy. This is also the first verbal commit of the 2026 class for Georgia, and this is a great way to kick it off. Obviously, some not very positive stuff going on with our class of 2025, but like I said, this is a great way to kick off the 2026 class. And we will need a quarterback by that time if you kind of project of how it's going to
Sure.
go over. That'll be Ryan Puglisi's junior year. Gunnar Stockton would be a fifth year by that time. So definitely in need of a quarterback for that class. And I'm super excited about it. I haven't really, I guess, seen too much analysis on it, but I've seen videos of this kid playing football. Just unbelievable, arm talent, especially for that's a sophomore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, if you look at his
Yeah,
stats here, I mean,
I'm getting old.
he's over 4,000 yards in 2 years, 2,500 yards last year, 56% completion, 25 touchdowns in his sophomore campaign, and he had similar numbers in his freshman campaign. So this kid is no joke, to say the least. But to speak of this quarterback class, we talked about it in other shows before. This 2025 class in quarterback is pretty locked and loaded. I mean, Bryce Underwood, I think, is the number one quarterback currently committed to
I think he's the
LSU.
number one player as well.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast. They have the number one running back, wide receiver, and quarterback currently. LSU is cooking in the 2025 recruiting class, but we've said before that the quarterbacks are pretty much, like I said, all synced up. So we kind of alluded to it. It's like, look, if Georgia was to miss out on the 2025 class, thankfully you're kind of stockpiled a little bit. And so if we just move ahead and kind of get ahead of the game in 2026, we can miss that gap. You never want to miss a quarterback, and I don't believe they will. But in the sense of a top tier quarterback, they're all locked up. Again, Julian Lewis is still a heavy target. It feels like he's everything but USC. You know what I mean? It's like when that girl, like they're like she's together with a guy, but she's talking to everyone but that guy. You're like, yeah, this is never gonna last. It's just almost like it's just a status piece. She's just with him because they're supposed to be, right? Like it's the prom king queen situation, but she really loves so and so's got a chance to make a run here. And that seems to be like with Georgia and Ohio State with Julian Lewis and even Colorado to a bit. It's fun to watch. I don't think we're going to get into the other commits that happened to USC. It all just feels fabricated, like out of nowhere, because USC didn't recruit well last year. They haven't really put a product on the football field that would make me just rush to USC. And I was a big fan of Lincoln Riley, but he hasn't given me any reason to believe that, yeah, this thing's headed in the right direction. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to go there, but it's still USC. There's still a lot of money, but over Georgia and Ohio State, I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that, but let's just say it's undoubtedly NIL related.
Okay, I love it. Let's go. So we had this the weekend, right, where again I said Trevor Etn gets arrested. It just happened all at the same time. Isaiah Gibson, who we talked just 2-3 weeks ago, crystal ball to Georgia, then commits to USC off of one visit. You have Justice Terry, who is committed to Georgia. He flips to USC, and then Elijah Griffin, who's also been a heavy Georgia lean, visits USC all in the same weekend. Felt like they might have just had a triple combo threat there happen, but he has not committed anywhere. But crazy weekend. And what was ironic is that even Florida fans, because we had Isaiah Gibson visiting, we were feeling good about Isaiah Gibson. He was there this past weekend at Florida. We're like, this is a joke. None of these kids stick, because they also landed cornerback Hilton Stubbs, who was a heavy Florida lean, literally out of nowhere. I'm like, none of this seems legitimate at all.
Yeah, and I know Georgia fans know something too. Bear Alexander, one of the top defensive linemen in the class of 2022, out of completely nowhere last year, he transferred to USC, hit the portal, committed to USC right away. I do have a little insider, I guess, information on that. Bear Alexander was kind of going to Kirby, asking for more money, and he basically said, like, we're not able to do that. Like, but Bear Alexander was a guy who he was one of those guys who a true freshman in the 2022 season, and just tore it up when he got his opportunity, similar to a Branson Robinson and a Roderick Robinson the past 2 seasons at running back. Like those true freshmen that you see like aren't really getting the first team snaps, but like when they come in, they're just making an immediate impact. Bear Alexander has a G tattoo right here on his bicep too. I saw him at a Waffle House about 2 weeks before he hit the transfer portal, and I just couldn't believe that he transferred to USC, and he actually cost USC an entire game. I forgot who they were playing. I believe it was Arizona. He had a roughing the passer call, and he was like bawling his eyes out on the sideline, and so there's another guy that we lost to USC that could have been a huge impact to our defense, and they're all defensive linemen. I mean, that's the craziest part. I mean, these three dudes are all on the defensive line, and what's crazy about USC too is
They don't play defense.
their defensive the product they've been putting on defense has been abysmal. So maybe I guess you could kind of think of it from another perspective of these guys are going to go in right away as true freshmen and start.
And
And
Georgia pumps talent on the D line to the NFL.
yeah,
I mean, it makes zero sense whatsoever. And George, you have spoke before how the NIL it's a struggle right now for Georgia, and Georgia's in a good place where they're winning, so they can overcome the struggles. But for how long? And maybe we're starting to see a little bit of that chain break a little bit. So he has a Georgia Bulldog the Georgia G right here.
he has the Power G tattooed on his bicep. Yep.
I mean, he'll always
I
have
don't know if
Georgia.
he's gotten it removed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily say Georgia struggles in NIL. I mean, if you compare them to a lot of other programs,
Sure. I use
they
the word
aren't
struggle lightly.
up. Yeah, they aren't up to the caliber of a USC or Ohio State. That
When they
I mean,
should
you
be.
saw Ohio State. Yeah, you saw Ohio State in the transfer portal. I mean, pulling dudes left and right. I mean, just like no tomorrow. And I think this is another scenario where it's 100% NIL related. USC is known to have a good collective. It's in Los Angeles. A lot of opportunities for, brand marketing. Just how
Sure.
big of a market that Los Angeles is. Whereas, Athens, it's in the metropolitan. It's close to the metropolitan area of Atlanta, but it's still like an hour and a half east of Atlanta. So you don't have as many, I guess, hubs as you would
Sure.
at a USC in Los Angeles, and I guess that's also something to play a role in.
No, absolutely. Look, I don't think these guys will stick. They're already back. They've already, I think, came back on campus and visited, and I don't believe Kirby is going anywhere, nor is he panicking. The way that it feels, the way that the three all committed at one time was like, hey, commit now, and we'll give you a little something, but we'll see. I would expect USC to recruit at a higher level, just given the fact of everything that you just said. So I expect them to land some dogs, just not these particular ones, as we said. Now it looks like.
And
Go ahead.
it was all at one point, like it was all just all at once, like you said.
Yeah,
So
like
it's just so bizarre.
And Isaiah Gibson, up to that point, there was zero feeler. That was his first visit. He was there visiting. He had been to Georgia, I think, already a couple of times. He's from this area. Like,
Yep,
none of it
from
makes sense.
Georgia.
That's a big jump to go across the country off of one visit. Like, USC's cool. It's not like, I mean, the stadium is kind of like a Miami situation. Like, it's not like the fan base is. I don't think it's the greatest. The atmosphere isn't like anything spectacular. It's nothing like the SEC. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense, especially the number one edge in the country from the Georgia area. I think, right? Yeah, he's from Warner Robins. Yeah, I don't see it sticking. But it looks like Kirby and the boys have moved on, as you guys have been bombed. Some breaking news for On 3 today, as Steve Wiltfong has moved from 247 to On 3, which is a pretty big deal if you follow the recruiting landscape. Wiltfong has been the face of 247, and when Wiltfong puts in a crystal ball for 247, you damn near know that that's an absolute lock. And he has now hit the transfer portal and has moved to On 3, which has now just made On 3 a bigger powerhouse. But that happened today, and the Fong bombs were flooding the timeline. One of them being Bryce Davis, the number 7 edge in the country, which seems to be a response to the Isaiah Gibson noise.
Yeah, Bryce Davis, great name, by the way, receives crystal ball from Steve Wiltfong. But what I think is kind of interesting, that something they've, they always add for the crystal ball is the confidence level. Now, I know you have said that Steve Wiltfong's crystal balls are a lock, but it seems like every single lock has been anything but Georgia players. I remember when Caleb Downs, 100%. Isaiah Gibson was like 80%. This is 60%. So I don't know what a excuse me. I don't know what a 60% confidence level means if 100% doesn't mean 100%. Because when I saw that 100% for Caleb Downs a couple months ago, I was like, oh, sign him up. He was enrolled in classes already, I remember.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Caleb Downs was legitimately enrolled in classes because of that 100% crystal ball. Everything was set up.
Wow.
But whatever. That's a story for another day. But 60% confidence level, I don't know if I can trust it now with some of the other, I guess, locks he's had. But 6'3", 245-pound defensive lineman from Greensboro, North Carolina. 4-star, 8th ranked defensive lineman, and 58th ranked player overall. And that is according to 24/7 Sports. But I guess I got to start looking at On 3 now, because that's where Wiltfong's at. So, and like you said, this could be kind of a replacement for the Justice Terry decommitment, as well as the Isaiah Gibson decommitment. Isaiah Gibson was not committed, but
he was a lock.
Kind of, missing out on him. But yeah, definitely need another dog on the defensive line to make up for that.
Maybe that was the reason for the Wiltfong transfer portal move, because he's pretty, I would say, stickler, picky about his prediction percentage, and maybe get a little tatted up. I think I give a little bit of a pass on the transfer portal. Transfer portal's a new world, but also if he predicts the flip, it doesn't count as a miss, by the way. So I don't know if he predicted the flip to Ohio State. If he did, if he was ahead of it, doesn't count as a miss. I've learned that. So I don't know if that was the case, but I think it happened pretty quickly. And he gets pretty upset when he's wrong, when these kids lie to him. He gets pretty rowdy about it, from what I've heard from other. We've had a running back, Trayon Webb, where he told him he was going to Penn State. He put a crystal ball in for Penn State, and we know Trayon obviously is a Gator, which did not sit well with Wiltfong. But it's crazy to me that sometimes these guys get the crystal ball. Like if I'm a player, and I go talk to this guy, and immediately a crystal ball comes out. It's like, dude, like, why would I tell you? Like, you're just a six confident level. Like you're not gonna just go put that out there unless you think, from what I told you, is the gospel.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not. I mean, preferably not, I guess, the guy rankings wise, that I would rather have. Obviously, he's the 8th ranked defensive lineman, which is, it's awesome, and he's the top 60 player in the country. But the Isaiah Gibson homegrown guy out of Georgia is definitely
and it's still early. It's still early. Bryce Davis could make some strides. He's 62 nationally on 3, and Isaiah's 76 nationally. So on 3. Paz has him 116. So he is pretty low. But 247 has him at 58. So he's actually 247 has him ranked much higher than those other ones. So we'll see how it all plays out. Again, I think it's far from over. And you got the Dogs tomorrow night in basketball. Mike White taking them all the way to the Final Four for the NIT. They're not in the tournament. I mean,
What a run.
what a run. We were talking because obviously we're Gators, and my buddy and I are talking. He's giving me shit because he doesn't like Todd Golden. He's a big Mike White guy, and he said he would rather have a Final Four run into the NIT than us being bounced first round in the main tournament. You're a big basketball guy. What would you rather have sitting in the situation you're in now?
I mean, for a program like Georgia, who hasn't had,
Good point.
pretty much any success historically in basketball. I mean, one of the worst Power 5 basketball programs in the country, one Final Four appearance, more than Tennessee. Tennessee has 0. So yeah, 1983 made the Final Four and actually lost to that NC State team who won the championship that year. And so I guess for a program like that, making the NIT and having a deep run is huge.
Sure.
It wouldn't mean a lot for Florida. So it kind of goes it goes by program to program. It obviously means absolutely nothing to like a Kentucky or UNC or a Duke. I mean, I would expect them, which they have in recent years, those types of programs decline their invitations to the NIT.
Yeah.
So it all kind of depends on what the status of the program is. Obviously, in Georgia's case, when they got the invitation to the NIT, I mean,
Let's go win
they're
this
jumping
thing.
on that immediately. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like to play postseason basketball, they finished the regular season 17-16. I mean, for them to even get that invitation is kind of a blessing in the first place. So, and what do you know? Now we hit 20 wins. We're playing a great Seton Hall team. It's cool for the players, and I mean, doesn't mean too much to those big programs, but like an NIT championship. I mean, assuming that we make it that far, and then we'd have to probably play Indiana State, who is almost at 30 wins on the year. They're like 29-6 right now. That's obviously going to be super difficult, but let's just say hypothetically, that's massive for a program like Georgia.
I think you nailed it on the head. It just depends on the program, and for a program like Georgia, this is kind of like what it is for the Seton Halls and the Indiana States. Like they play like to either make to get in for the first round, or it's like, hey, if not, we're gonna go be really competitive in the NIT. And it's not a shot towards Georgia, it's just where the basketball program is. And for someone like Mike White, gets him a couple more, some more time under his feet. Just coaching more games is always beneficial. Coaching this team, building a relationship. Hopefully, you get some guys to stick. It's huge. It's like, in a way, it's like making a bowl game, and you're getting some more practice time with the squad and getting able to build that relationship, which could carry over into next year. So I agree, it's huge for Georgia.
Yeah, I'd say I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with what your friend said. I mean, just being in in March Madness.
Yeah.
Now,
like, nobody's watching an IT
program like they might tune into the championship.
No.
Like I'm saying, like, here I'll tell you, for gamblers, for people who gamble,
when is it? When is it?
I actually don't know when the championship is, but I know. Listen, all I know is when Georgia plays, and that's tomorrow, Tuesday, April 2nd, against Seton Hall. So that's really all I know. I would assume it's on Thursday. The way because one of my friends, who I was actually just talking to, huge Tennessee fan, which they obviously lost. But I think it's kind of smart for the NIT to play midweek, because if you think about it, if they put the NIT on a Saturday night, who's watching that?
That's what
even less people than normal. But I mean, if you put the NIT Final Four on a Tuesday night, that's the only college basketball game that's being played that day. So I actually do think viewership is actually not as bad. And the Ohio State Georgia game was the most viewed NIT game since 2017. and that's including championships.
Well, those are two big teams. Those are two big.
Yeah.
I actually heard
Those,
like that.
the brands of those teams are huge.
I actually heard about that game, which is crazy to think like of who was in this tournament. Like I didn't even know. Again, like Iowa's in this tournament, VCU's in this tournament. I'm looking at it now. So it is Thursday. You're right. It's April 4th.
I kind of assumed it was Thursday.
Yeah, on ESPN, and that was my thing is like if this game was on like any other day, no one's watching it. So the possibility that someone watches on Thursday is extremely high, especially with and now they carry basketball on almost every single day for this week until we have the championship, which obviously follows this weekend. But yeah, you had Ohio State, you had Xavier. Crazy to think Xavier once a big time basketball school. Princeton, so some Providence. These are big schools that have like
Wake Forest. Wake Forest. They played Georgia as well.
Okay. Oh, they are. Okay, they played App State. Okay.
Yeah.
LSU was in it too. They got booked from North Texas. So Seton Hall was the one seed coming into this thing.
Yeah.
And Indiana State was too.
Seed.
So
and then so Indiana State plays Utah, and then the winner of that game plays the winner of Georgia Seton Hall. So
can you name the last two NIT winners?
Absolutely not. Can you?
Hell no. I mean this. Let me see. Let's pull it up because now I want to know. Most recent championship was North Texas, and it was their first title.
Oh, and then 2022 it was Xavier.
That's pretty big. Okay, yeah, Xavier's been kind of MIA from the madness. NIT, the Green Machine.
Yeah, they were in it. I remember like in the late 2010s, they were in it like every single year.
Yeah. During the Florida runs, I remember Xavier always being like a big time school, and even when I was in college, they were a decent team. My buddy was a big Xavier guy because that's Cincinnati school or Ohio school.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, great show. Good stuff. A lot to go over. We'll have the spring game in 2 weeks, right? April 13th. So I'm sure we'll have some great things to talk about. And maybe Trevor plays, maybe he doesn't. But definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. And excited to go over all that stuff, man.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
All right, boss. Till next time, guys. I'm Shelton. That's Bryce. We'll see you.